So you follow the guys online who seem to have it all together. You watch their highlight reels and you read the books they recommend. You listen to their podcasts. You even got saved posts going back 3 years of things that were supposed to change something. And you still don't know what you want. You don't know where you're going in life. You don't have a mission in life. You don't have something that pulls you out of bed with any kind of conviction whatsoever. You look at other men building something, and there's this strange absence. Like the channel that's supposed to be receiving that signal is just offline or mute. You've probably told yourself it's laziness or lack of discipline. Maybe that you just haven't found the right content yet. Well, that's not what's happening. What's happening is actually a neuroscience problem. And it started long before you had any choice about it. I'm Dr. Trevor Wilkins. I'm a PhD level clinician, an expert in trauma-informed care, and I built a system that does exactly this. And I spent 20 years in uniform before I ever sat behind this desk. So let me translate what the research actually says into something that you can use. So in law enforcement, we talk about the fatal funnel. It's the doorway, the point of maximum vulnerability, the place where you're the most exposed, where a threat can end you fast if you move through it wrong. Well, early childhood trauma is often the fatal funnel for identity. It didn't just leave marks, it interrupted the construction of the self. The part of your brain that's supposed to build a coherent story of who you are, where you came from, where you're going. And that construction gets interrupted at the foundation. Everything built after it is on cracked concrete. So you're not unmotivated, you're unbuilt. There's a difference. And that difference changes what you do about it. So here's what the research shows. So let's look at the default mode network. Bessel van der Kolk's work gives us the entry point here. The finding that changed the field wasn't just about trauma living in the body, it's that trauma arrests the development of the self. Specifically, it disrupts this default mode network. This network is your brain's self-referential system. It handles 3 things here that are important. First is your mental time travel, the ability to project yourself forward in a future state. And your self-continuity, the felt sense that you from 10 years ago and you from right now are the same person. And the autobiographical integration, it's weaving your experiences into a fully coherent I. So early childhood trauma, especially chronic relational trauma, neglect, abuse, any kind of attachment disruption, it hits this network when it's forming. The brain regions that should be building that scaffold and identity get disorganized around this threat. So the scaffold gets built, the coherent future self gets constructed. That's not a motivation problem, that's a structural problem. You can't will your way into a mission when the architecture that generated this future-oriented self, this concept, was never completed. Lisa Feldman Barrett's work takes it even further. The brain isn't reactive, it's a prediction machine. It doesn't wait for the world to just happen and then suddenly respond. It constantly is running a model of what comes next based on prior experience. For the man with early childhood trauma, the prior input has installed one dominant prediction. The future's dangerous and unpredictable, or simply just not available to me. So drive, that real, sustained directional drive, it requires their brain to run a prediction that effort produces meaningful outcomes. When the early experiences repeatedly violated that prediction, the system just stops running it. Not because you're weak, because that's what learning is. The system adapted to what you knew. The standing order that got installed was conserve, don't advance. So the adaptive information processing model, this is where the clinical precision comes in. Shapiro's AIP model says that experiences which get properly processed integrate into adaptive memory. They inform you, they don't run you. So early childhood trauma, especially pre-verbal trauma, it gets encoded before the brain has the language and the narrative capacity to process it into this adaptive memory. So it just stays raw and frozen in the limbic system with no cortical resolution. So think of it this way. It's a corrupted file. The data's in the system, but it can't be opened correctly. It just runs in the background, constantly consuming resources and producing errors, but you can't actually access it cleanly. So identity and mission and future orientation are constructed from process memory. The brain builds a sense of who I am and where I'm going from all those integrated autobiographical experiences. If the foundational files are corrupted, You're trying to build a mission on system throwing errors that you can't even see. There's one more piece. Early childhood trauma alters the mesolimbic dopamine development, the anticipatory wanting forward circuitry. The system is supposed to generate sustained goal-directed behavior. In men with early childhood trauma, it either goes flat, nothing compels or nothing drives, or it dysregulates into high stimulation without direction, constantly burning and not consuming. Either way, it doesn't produce the sustained motivational architecture the mission requires. Now here's what none of these studies will actually tell you, because they don't go deep enough. Underneath that flatness, underneath the scrolling and the saving and the watching other men build something, there's a belief running. It's not a thought, it's older than thoughts. It's a perceptual filter that was installed before you had language to even name what it was. And it will come in a few forms, and you'll see this. Defectiveness. There's something fundamentally wrong with me that can't be changed. Drive requires the implicit prediction that can effort that will even produce change. Defectiveness cancels the equation before the goal-directed behavior starts. Why pursue a mission if the encoded belief is, I'll fail because I'm broken at the root anyway? It comes in another form. This is fate. My life is already written. What happens to me is not in my control. This is the most mission-annihilating filter that there is. The person stops generating any goal-directed behavior because the installed learning is that behavior and outcomes have no relationship. Life happens to them, not through them. And it comes in the form of this imposter belief. People with missions are real. I'm just pretending. This one specifically blocks the role model problem. And here's why that matters and why I started researching this. You watch men building something and you feel nothing transferable. The inspiration arrives and just immediately gets neutralized. Because the filter says that trajectory belongs to somebody else, not to me. Now, these aren't excuses and they're not character flaws. They're perceptual filters installed in a child by an environment that child had no choice about. And they're still running the show. So what do you do with it? Well, it's not inspiration. You won't get it from a speech. Not more content, not finding a mentor, not watching one more highlight reel. Here's what I do with the men that I work with. And it starts with a question that sounds simple, and it's actually not. Who authorized that belief? Who? In my framework, every encoded belief gets treated as intelligence, information in a case file. And the first thing that you do with a piece of intelligence is verify the source. Where did this come from? When was it collected? What was the rank and the authority of the source at the time that collected it? Because if the source was a 4-year-old in a chaotic household, if the intelligence was collected by a child who had no frame of reference, no comparison set, no agency, that information cannot be cleared for operational use anyway. A 5-year-old has no authority to issue standing orders to a 40-year-old that are still running. That's not therapy language. That's a chain of command problem. This belief that I am defective, cite it. When was it installed? What evidence was used? Who was the commanding officer? What was their rank? What was their reliability? If you ran that same chain of evidence through any legitimate verification process, it would massively fail. But here's the precision you need. For some of you, you can't get to that dispute yet. I get it, because the belief isn't in language. It's in the body. It's in the nervous system. It's encoded below the level where cognitive work can even reach. That's not a failure of willpower. That's a sequencing problem. You need to process those corrupted files before you can rewrite the standing order. So here's the command move you need. 3 steps. In order, don't skip the sequence. Step 1, run the neuroscan. Ask yourself, when this flatness hits, when the absence of mission shows up, does it feel like a thought or does it feel like weather? Does logic slide off of it? Does your body do something when you try to push it into the future anyway? If yes, you're not dealing with a belief that needs disrupting. You're dealing with a file that needs processing first. So step 2, get the right tool for the right problem. If this is encoded below the language, it's in the nervous system and in the body, you need stabilization work first, whether that's grounding or regulatory capacity or window of tolerance expansion, things I talk about. Not inspiration, not more information, stabilization. If you're working with a clinician, this is the conversation to have with them. If you're not, it's a decision worth reconsidering. So step 3, now you got to run the citation challenge. Once you have enough stability to stay in the prefrontal cortex where the belief activates, audit it. Treat every belief about who you are and what you're capable as intelligence that requires source verification. Not argument, not positive self-talk. Verification. What's the source? Assess the authority. Most of it's not operationally sound. And when that intelligence gets stripped of its operational authority, the mission that was always there will start to surface. Not because you found it, because you stopped burying it under your corrupted files. I'll tell you something about myself. I spent 20 years in uniform, 15 in law enforcement, before that as an EMT. I've seen what happens to human beings at the worst moments of their lives. And I spent years thinking that absorbing that cost was just part of the job, and a piece of it is. But I didn't have language for what was happening to me. I just had performance. I had the next call, the next shift, the next thing to execute. Mission's easy when the mission is handed to you by a job. The radio tells you where to go. So at the end, when I started to step back, when I had built a mission from the inside instead of taking one from the outside, I ran into the same wall that you're running into. Not because I like drive, but because I had never been required to locate my own signal of mission. I started with my signal. It turned into the job. So what I've learned through this PhD level education, through EMDR training under one of the most leading researchers in the field, through building a framework from the ground up, is that mission isn't found. It's uncovered. It's what's left when the corrupted files stop running loud enough to drown it out. The men I work with don't need more inspiration. They need the static cleared out. And then the signal was there the whole time. If this hit something in you, if this sounded like less of a YouTube video and more of a description of the last 10 years of your life, I want you to do something. First, I want you to download my free guide. That's it, no commitment. The link's in the description. It's 5 internal patterns that are destroying your command. It's destroying it in your own mind, and it's free, and it's where to start. Or if you already know that you're ready to do the actual work, consider my command collective. It's where men like you are doing exactly this. The link is also in the bio. You can also go to my website and sign up to work directly with me. The mission isn't missing. The files are corrupted. There's a difference, and now you know what to do about it.